It all started with a disc herniation, which left me unable to round my back even an inch without a flare-up. And over the next year, from avoiding that side of the herniation, my hips became 1 to 2 inches higher on one side, so everything I did, including squatting, was off balance. This led to actual hip impingement in my socket, which would stab me in the hip joint anytime I would start to squat deep. And then, to no surprise, after about 3 months of that during an ab exercise, I got a sports hernia in that same side, which made it impossible to stretch even an inch in this direction. So the only thing that undid this lineage of injury for me was going exactly where I caused pain and scaled it back to a level that was infallible. It was impossible to fail. And so slowly over time, facing exactly where I had the clue of pain instead of avoiding it, I got through these injuries that I didn't think I could without surgery. So there's more answers than just the first 2 pages of Google. You might need to learn from someone who went through it themselves and try to study your own body with an observant eye and play the long game. So for me, the reason why I demoed me rounding my back to a scary level or the deep squat or a split wasn't really to show off. I mean, that was part of it, and I hope you like me like 1% more and think I'm cooler because of it. But literally because that was something I was so intolerant to, each of those 3 qualities. But it became clear to me there was no other way for me to get out of symptoms of pain unless I took those exact qualities and got not just normal at them, got better than the norm at them. So by the point I was stuck in my back loop, if you don't know who I am, I'll do a little intro. I had chronic injuries from the time I was 16 to 24, and I went through very standard conservative treatment, especially for my low back, and I entered the back hell loop, as I call it, which is you have your first injury, you do McGill Big 3, you do dead bugs, you do bird dogs, you learn to stabilize your core, it works, and then you get your next re-injury, and then it works, and then you get your next re-injury, and then those things stop working. You do press-ups till your spine starts to get arthritis, it feels like. You decompress from a bar till there's no more compression left, and those things all stop working because they're band-aids to the true problem. So after about 2-3 years of that, the injuries started to spread to my hips, and that's what the point of this video is. Going from disc herniation to a hip hike and impingement, and then to a true sports hernia. I thought I had 3 complete isolated injuries that had no relation to each other. And I actually, there's a lot of people in the comments when I make these videos that go, that's my exact lineage, and they begged me for an answer. Irresponsibly, I just posted the clip, to spread the word of it, and then people are like pressing me, when is the video coming out? I need answers. So that's why I'm here. There's a gun to my head on the internet by these people, so I'm here to serve. So that's who I am. I've been stuck in injury and basically had to give up 12 different times and find mentors in all these different places just to fix my own body. And so if you're in this case, I made this video for the person who either has one of these isolated problems or has gone through the lineage. And I'm going to give you a spoiler, 2 things. The journey out of it's not going to be short. And this video is probably not going to be that short. So there's people that comment on my last videos in 58 minutes, this is terribly long, what are you doing? And I just comment, you're not my target audience, bro. Because if I saw this video, I would have been sitting with popcorn, like book in hand. So I do recommend you have a book in hand, ready to take notes and ready to trial and error while we're going, and pause this video to test stuff. This is your assessment. You will become your own back expert. And so let's get into step by step. We're gonna start from the left and then go to the right here. Each of these will help each other, but I want you to just basically apply it to yourself and try to think of clues that you found along the way. So I got this little notebook to keep this video under 2 hours. Seriously, I'm a ranter because I'm passionate from all the times I was lost. So let's go first to the disc herniation. If this is your first back video of me, this is going to be a lot in all directions. But first, the disc herniation is a symptom of your bad back or your shit back. It is not the cause of your shit back. So what I mean is a shit back is one that's sensitive, hidden and imbalanced, incredibly weak, and tight as fuck. Those ingredients make it easy for disc herniations to happen, which is not the end of the world, but why do the injuries become chronic when a disc herniation doesn't need to be chronic? Most of the times they reabsorb, but you end up in the back held loop, not because of the disc herniation, that's a symptom. So the real root is your back's qualities are terrible. You don't get a pump in that area of your body, you've avoided it, you become imbalanced and weak and tight. So we're gonna go directly here. What is the answer for the disc herniation that's become chronic? The way I like to remember and describe it is we are going to build evidence. So what does that mean? Odds are you've been kind of sold the opposite direction to some degree, which is avoidance. You may have trained your core all the way around the 360 midsection, except here. Especially not the deep muscles that really require deeper ranges with the spine. So we train our abs, you do dead bugs, you do bird dogs, you train some of those stabilizers on the side, the transverse abdominis, but what about the spinal erectors? To a crazy pump. What about holding contraction? So this is what I'm going to show you how to do. So if you've never trained your back, good news is your back is not hopeless. You've never tried. And I didn't for years. So we're going to go through the standard that you need to work up to. We're going to build evidence against the flare-ups, against the spasms. So let's start as high as I can get this pad. I think that's it. So we're gonna build evidence and holds. So if you've gone to PT for some time, you've likely done prone press-ups, which the idea is localizing nerve pain, putting your spine in the direction against the herniation. That's passive. That's a great thing to start with, but what if you never start to squeeze the muscles and naturally contract the muscles with load? You're just going to be basically manipulating joints, which is like popping knuckles, just cranking it. So the next step is take that same position, like a press up, but just with the strength of your low back muscles. I'm putting the pad as high as I can get it. It's pretty much up here on the stomach. You could even stand lower. And we're gonna go for 2 minutes. Usually the machines have handles, and you can help assist yourself by holding. Make it as easy as it needs to be, because the test isn't today. The test is tomorrow. Are you hating me after watching this video because you're in a flare-up, or you have a spasm, or it's super tight and weirdly sore? This is what you need to become familiar with, communicating with your back again. So after 2 minutes, let's do about 2 weeks of that, twice a week. Can you now go to a slightly lower pad height? 2 minutes, with assistance or without. Say you get through that, you're a boss, you're killing it. You're a month or two in, put that pad even lower. Now it's at the hips. Can you now handle 2 minutes with more of your load off the edge? You start to get weird, this flare up, this like tightness during it or after, it's ambiguously sore, put that boy back up. Put it back up a notch or two. So the eventual goal is to take as many weeks or months as it needs to be able to do 2 minutes with the pad roughly at your groin hip area. This is the last place I would go. I wouldn't go even lower than this. If 2 minutes is tolerable, then we start to test with reps. So this concept of building evidence is taking where you typically flare up and building not just muscular trust with the actual strength of the tissue, but also neurological trust. So flare-ups are almost, you could think of it as, when I say flare-up, I mean this sort of meme that I create when I go to pick up something, and then I get shot in the back, and then I'm falling. So that isn't just your disc actually herniating again. That's you having a discrepancy in tissue and nervous system. Something gets tripped, like a little, those ninja lasers. Someone's robbing a bank and they got all those like alarm lasers. It's like you trip one of those and all of a sudden things spasm and flare up and tighten and twist, because that's the body's protective mechanism. It doesn't want you to hurt the disc again. And after months and months of not building evidence, it now became very, very afraid and protective. It's triggers. Just like take someone that went through some crazy emotional trauma, put them in a normal societal environment, a normal circumstance or situation, relationship, and they tweak. You're like, yo, why did they get so triggered? Unresolved trauma stays there. So this is building evidence to wash that out. That's a weird analogy, but it's really the same. So instead of being vulnerable to boom, flare up, you're building, I'm calling it neurological trust, that, hey, I can contract these muscles with the hold, no motion yet, just squeezing, and we don't need to spasm. I can get firing without pain. So now we're gonna start the journey of reps. The pad needs to be low enough that it's not blocking you, and you can start with hinge reps. This is for the next 2 to 3 months. Going forward with assistance only halfway. So it's essentially a hold. You're not changing your vertebrae position. The whole back is together, and you're just adding in motion. After about a month of sessions, twice a week, no problem, then you can start to go assisted full range and see how does that feel. This is now opening up the spine piece by piece. This is where physical therapy usually drops off. Or your favorite online trainer, influencer who hasn't had a back injury, this is where they disagree with me. And that's okay. If people don't agree with my practical theories that I had to use to get out of my problem, I don't need to debate it. I will say we could go back for back. So whoever you tag me, and if they want to see whose low back is stronger, we could go for it. And the reason I'm so confident is because it has to be built upon using your spine. So the eventual goal, I'm going to start my real set right here, is full range reps, decompressing at the bottom. I'm inverted, and then recompressing piece by piece. All these little muscles I'm going to name out are working when you start to separate the spine. So you got the multifidus, super responsible in helping lift up the spine and stabilize it. The rotatorus, by the name you can hear rotation, right? That one really gets used when you go single leg, because as you can tell, rotation has to be involved with one leg to keep you from tipping sideways. You start to feel a whole different little pull in the spine. There's a little muscle called interspinalis. It's in between every segment of the spine. Now, I'm not saying this is the only way to train those things, but if you avoid using your spine piece by piece, well, you're just treating your back as one big block of wood, one board. It's not a mystery why these things start to break down. So the standard we have, I'm yapping to distract myself. The standard we have is 30 full range reps. I don't know what I'm at. I'm just going to go till I'm cooked, and I can't. But this is about finding your low back number. While I'm here grinding, I'm going to do a mini 45-second lesson on the topic of tissue tolerance. So let's say you have the muscular strength to do 10 reps like this. But the next day you wake up in a flare-up. You have exceeded your tissue tolerance. So that term is basically how much force or load can a specific tissue, bone, muscle, ligament, whatever, how much can that tissue handle without getting in pain the next day, having a bad reaction? So maybe you have the muscular strength, the glutes, the hamstrings, even some of the low back, to do 30 reps day one. But if you do anything over 10 reps, you get a flare-up, you need to do 10 reps, maybe 9. So that discrepancy of your strength and tissue tolerance, that's what we got to even out. This is the number one thing that messes people up when they start this journey. They are going way too fast, and I get it. We're used to going to our one rep max failure. What's our limits? The problem is your limit isn't strength here. It's trust. So start slower than you think. You're using survivorship bias. You live to see the next training session, you didn't flare up, that's a good sign. Progress very slow. I'm gonna stop after a couple more. I hope this was at least 30, Jesus. Okay. So now you're gonna witness what we call a low back pump right now. This is real, not acting. Like a bodybuilder, hold on, let me just stand up. Woo! Okay, so like a bodybuilder trains their biceps, right? Gets a massive pump and it's swollen. You have rows of muscle on both sides of the spine that can get swelled up through a pump. And then you get a low back pump, which is like, I'm not gonna lie to y'all, it's not fun. It doesn't hurt, but it's like, you kind of feel like you're walking on bricks for the next 5 minutes. So you can't really get a tweak or flare up at this point because you're literally pumped up. Your spine's getting a hug. So I'm gonna be waddling a little weird for the next half of the video, but that is the building evidence journey of supporting discs through spinal stability and strength. You gotta start with your back as one piece, one entire thing holds, right? And then you start to treat your spine like the joint by joint structure it is, reps. This entire journey to get those two standards of 2 minutes and 30 reps can and should take up to a year. If you've had back issues for over a year, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, you should expect this journey of rebuilding your back to take at least a year. Anything less than that, you're gonna double the time. So let's go to the next step. Hip hike. Also, this is actually really important. We're doing a giveaway for these products. I make no affiliate money on this. So if you ever see me promoting something for profit that's not my own, kill me because I'm held under hostage. This is a different thing. The maker of this, Nordstick, I like this one a lot. I like the owner a lot because he did this crazy thing with me where I will promote this product if I actually like it, and I do. And the only deal is take all the profit I would make from this discount code, low back ability, and let's use all the profit and put it into giving away free machines. And so that's what we're currently doing. We gave away 6 machines 2 weeks ago, and we're gonna announce our winners now in the comment section here. For this exact product, we're probably giving away 6 or 8. I gotta see, do the math on the commission, maybe less, but we're giving away every 2 weeks forever. So if you're like, oh, I don't have a back extension, that's too expensive. If you're domestic in the US, write your story. It's at lowbackability.com. I'm gonna put it on the screen. lowbackability.com/rooting for you. Enter your story. I'm gonna read through them all every 2 weeks, and we're giving these away. The other product we also have, shameless plug-in. This is attached to a doorway. And so why I like this product so much is it doesn't require a huge space. Just letting you guys know, I make no money from this. I just think it's super, super cool, and we can get these to you for whoever needs. So this is called the Back Buddy, where it's a doorway product that attaches to the top. It holds your hips, and you can do the holds here, and it feels pretty good on the holds. Really works on the reps. You don't get as much hamstrings and glutes. It's definitely more just low back. But we're also gonna give these away on the next round. So when you enter, you can click if you wanna try to win the machine or the Back Buddies. But these are both on sale at that site too with a discount. So that's my little shameless plug-in. This whole thing is by the people for the people. The more people that buy these, the more we get to give away, and it's just a cool thing to keep doing. So number 2, hip hike, impingement. You have probably tried a bunch of little drills where you know your hips aren't even, so you start to do things that train your hips movement left to right. And that's not terrible, it's not bad. Just like bird dogs and, you know, sideline clamshells and all the stabilization stuff isn't bad for the back. But if you're just trying to move your hip and maybe do banded dislocations and those things where you're lifting up your hip just an inch or two, that may feel like you're hitting the area, but what are the contributing factors? And that's what I didn't know about with the hip impingement I got. It was very much related to the same reason I got the disc herniation. So for this one, we're going to go back to something I taught last video, which was the squeeze, then stretch approach. So, a major reason for me why I had hip hike and hip impingement. The disc herniation definitely affected me to trying to sit on one side and lean on things and avoid that. So yeah, that could have helped with that imbalance laterally. But the impingement then, and the stabbing deep in the hip, especially if I did anything flexing my hips, a lot of that had to do with the musculature that pulls my hips inward this way. So I'm listing a lot of stuff you're not gonna see on page 1 through 20 of Google, and I only came to these conclusions through exhausting all of those pages and then starting my own trial and evidence with what's actually helping me month by month. This may not be your case. These are really wide range, injuries and diagnosis you could have. But for me at least, I think it could help everyone to improve. So with my hips getting so tight on the hip flexors and groin, I never realized I had the issue till it started stabbing and stabbing. So when I say squeeze then stretch, we're going to go exactly where I needed to open up. My groin, I remember, one, how I tried to fix the hip impingement was a little crazy. But I thought, okay, my groin is tight, I need to just try to open it up and yank on it. And I remember videos of me trying to even reach forward or get my elbows to the ground, and I was so tight I couldn't. And so I took a break from all that kind of stuff. And just to show, I had to get exceptionally good at everything I was bad at to get out of pain. So going from barely touching my elbows to I got my chin without any kind of tweak or pull, that was a dream back then. And then eventually getting to comfortable ability to sit in a squat came as a byproduct. Now the way I got there wasn't this extreme stretching. It was actually very, very easy and gentle because that would have just tore up my hip. So the squeeze and stretch is a concept where I want to stretch my groin. I believe the tightness in that is pulling my hip internally. So instead of having the room in my hip joint to go back into the socket, it's stuck inwards, and that's causing stabbing unnaturally, jamming in my hip. So before I go and stretch the groin like with the stuff I was showing, let's do the opposite and squeeze it. So what I would do is something like this for about 30 seconds on a side-lying adductor raise. This leg's over. I'm going to hold this up. Just squeeze as hard as I can. So it's an iso hold. I'm trying to get a little pump in that groin. So I'm not just holding it up easy, I'm actively pushing. And after 30 seconds, it's gonna be shaking and pumped up with a little blood. So I got another 15. Where the leg goes, kind of up to you. Your mobility is gonna be limited. You may have to have it down, so whatever. But just lift that inner leg up as high as you can. Okay, I'm gonna switch. And so the concept is, if the only time you directly train a tissue is trying to stretch it, you're just gonna get an overly sensitive tissue. That's piriformis syndrome. That's a lot with the psoas and hip flexors, these chronically tight areas, the calves, the feet, people that stretch all the time. How often do you get a pump? How often do you contract it? That's also important. So the more I squeeze this and get a regular pump, now immediately after, I'm going to go into a stretch of the groin, and it's gonna feel so much better. There's protection in the pump. So what I'm gonna do for this one is a butterfly. So, tried to go shoeless this whole video. Now we're here. You've probably seen me do loaded butterfly. I'm gonna keep it a full bean ski with y'all. This isn't my best one. So, as a sprinter who squatted a lot as well, I've just seen this. This is my excuse. Sprinters and squatters, their adductors, crazy tight, especially the ones here that we're training more of the hip flexors. So I would elevate what you're sitting on. Instead of sitting on the ground, I got the Atlas of a Human Anatomy and Surgery book. Thick. Get your thickest book. and then you're going to sit butt against the wall and try to have as little low back rounding as possible. This is pretty common. Feet are gonna slide. May need some a little grippier.
Grippy.
So, let's get that out. Getting back in here. The main thing is as little low back rounding as possible. You want to be upright and tall. You can start with just your hands and gently open up. Actually, don't need these. And then slowly start to use weight. Make it a strength through length exercise, meaning you're not just yanking on it and resting. Do reps. Only go to your 90% range. So if I could force it to here as hard as I can, I'm only gonna go to here and I'm gonna work to that point and get a really controlled stretch. Now, a little context, I did this for a year and didn't get any progress. And it was because I didn't do the squeeze before. I just started to feel, instead of the muscle pulling and a good stretch, I only felt the hip joint. And it felt like a ligament or tendon or something was just, it wasn't what the stretch was supposed to feel. And so getting that protective pump right before, and especially over the weeks of doing it, got back into the stretch with a good intent, not forcing the max range, and now I feel the muscle again. Progress started coming back. So little tips and tricks hopefully save you a year of struggling, being stuck. Eventually, I'm not sure if I'll have it, but sitting against the wall, some people are able to get knees to the ground. I'm close, I guess, but it doesn't matter about these standards, absolutely. It's about working towards them. And where I started was up here. So 30 good pulses at about 90% of your stretch, just getting a good pump. It's gonna feel maybe a little sensitive in the first week. Make a 6-month plan that this can start to improve over time. This directly helped me now to go into what added up some squat mobility for me without the pain, elevating the heels and then sitting completely upright. And so I had to go, like I said, exactly where I was exposed in my pain, find a variation to make it easier, and then I started doing 2 minutes just right here. First with no weight, and then I started to do it with weight, and then over time, I didn't need the elevation, and I started to be able to squat without the butt wink, without the stabbing. This is with motion, so it's still different than doing reps and being pain-free. But 2 minutes at a squat hold was really, really helpful. The weight can help counterbalance you. And opening up all the tissue that pulled me in tight in the hip joint. And so that's not the full equation for the hip impingement that I had. I'm now gonna show specific stuff for the joint that I think can really help. Because I know what someone's thinking is like, nah, dude, hip impingement is an actual bone disorder issue where things grow. CAM or FAI, where there's literally genetics playing in, where things get aggravated and then you get bony growths that then start to rub at the cartilage and labrum and don't leave room in the hip joint. And I get that, but still, things can open up extra. You can have synovial fluid come to areas over weeks and months, and even with abnormal growths in joints, I've seen people personally get to a pain-free level through full range. I don't know how, it's case by case, but even if you have a diagnosis where something has grown extra or something has broken down, even a fusion in the spine, you shouldn't be able to round forward, but things can open up extra in other segments. So you can get back to it. I don't have a fusion, but still. So let's go through the other side of hip impingement, going to the joint, trying to support it directly. We're gonna go through a complete outer hip circuit. We're going to get the ball and socket moving around in all directions. Great long-term investment. So we're gonna start with simple stuff you've already done. I recommend you do this with me. If you haven't started yet, this is a good one to jump in and see how you do. So we're gonna go fire hydrants. It's really just about moving the hip socket, the hip joint, the ball in the socket moving around. If you get to a certain area and there's a click, I want you to stop just short and come out of it. So go to the click, stop just short, and come back. If you're good all the way through, do 10. I'm only gonna do one side to save time. I'm gonna have to do my other side after the video. But slow, controlled, this used to be terrible for me. Meaning I was just awful at it. Couldn't even get my hip up and hold it. So after 10, you're gonna go opposite direction. Up, out, and back. As far as you can, nice and controlled. An important thing to remember about this helps your inner hip flexibility. If you are super weak on the outer hips like I was, think about it. If you're trying to stretch out here, what lifts your leg up sideways? It's the outer hip muscles. So the better you can contract in a tight squeeze, the more you'll stretch the opposite side. Here's a good one. If you contract your triceps really hard at the lockout, that's where you get a bicep stretch. So when I want to stretch the groin, I also squeeze the outer hips, and then I start to get much deeper than if I just hung out passively. So I think this also played a big role in me getting that squat mobility. The groin flexibility was strengthening the opposite. So I'm doing 10. If you were going with me and had to listen to the ramp, sorry for messing up your flow. And after 10, controlled, we're gonna do just 10 abduction, just straight out like that. I recommend pushing both knees open, the one even on the ground, as if you could move the ground. It'll help you get even more opened up. Try not to move your torso. This is kind of like those core stabilization exercises even. So 10. I'm a bad counter, so I'm gonna guess. And then we're gonna go into, immediately after, this is a whole blast of the outer hip. Something I coined within LBA. If you remember, you already know this one, the outer hip drop set. So let's get into 90-90. Actually, before we do that, we have one more step. 90-90, the leg we just trained is in the back. Last one we're gonna do with motion is this CARS, controlled articular rotation, just moving your joint controlled. Go heel to heel, the leg you just worked is on that back. And then 2 internal rotation. The foot actually never touches the ground. Heel to heel, foot up. Again, if you get to a point where it just feels stab, stop short. You're good, you're good, you're good there, not good, stop short. If you need to lie down on the elbow, or even change the motion just to here, that's fine. Slowly trying to get the whole range of your hip back, rotating, lifting, extending. This is everything you need in your hip before you put it together and try to lift heavy and just jam into it. So 10 reps is the last. We'll do here. No hands is a super great goal over time, slow and controlled. I just started being able to do that, so long game on that. And then we're going to blast the outer hip muscle without motion. Short range squeeze again, like we did for the groin. We would do 30 seconds. Let's do it together. Lift the foot up, keep the knee on the ground, and we're just gonna hold, not just resting with it up, actively contracting, trying to get it as high as you can, squeezing the outer glutes. It's pumped up. So that's 15 seconds. If you're doing this at home, I would pause after the 3 stages of this and go through the entire opposite side with the fire hydrants and then these holds. So now step 2, stage 2 is lifting. So now the foot and knee is off the ground, using slightly different muscles of the outer hip to different degrees. Holding that. If you feel uncomfortable in the back or it's too hard in the hip, lay down and away from it. If it's pretty easy, you can get up and turn towards it. So 30 seconds there. Got 3, 2, 1. Last step is just a kick out. So now, without rotating anything, just having that hip going up, Toes can't be up. That's super easy. You have to rotate the whole hip inwardly a bit, push the heel to the ceiling. I'm lying completely on my side, 30 seconds. The burn's crazy. So remember, every bit better and stronger in the squeeze of the outside of the hip. It's 30. The better we're gonna get. And the opposite, this is what I was just doing on one side at a time to be able to stretch the inside without any pain. So these are things I was bad at. And I didn't even have the freedom to go hard at. So everything I had to do so slow, week by week, and just not rush it. And so getting the hips moving again, the hip hike, those are imbalances we're gonna cover with this next one too. But opening up the deep groin and strengthening the outside, that imbalance is major. And then for the ball and socket, that's where long-term, can you get it moving without pain? Don't just avoid it and don't just grind through a click. Go short of it, come back. Opposite, come back. Obviously, there's different ways to do it. That's just what worked for me. Lastly, hopefully I made this video not 2 hours. The sports hernia, my nemesis. This one was the most demoralizing because it had the least information on the internet. All I saw was there's a bunch of athletes who got it, especially football players, hockey players, a whole lot. And basically they just kept getting mesh surgeries. So they would get surgery for the groin, they would clip the adductor because the adductors were that tight and they knew that affected it. And then they would get just symptoms over and over and have to clip it again and maybe a mesh and clip it again. Just basically, it was a bad pipeline of recurring surgeries. And so it was during COVID that this happened, so I was at home. I actually got it by doing a dead bug, and I reached out and it went click. And I was like, that's a different kind of click. And for the next week, I had pain in my organs, like inside, seeing different type of doctors. And it just turned out I had a very serious tear in my low ab wall right to the pubic bone. So I probably still have the tear, but I opened up and strengthened things so much all around it that I have zero symptoms, but it wasn't overnight. And so what we're gonna do for this is understand what leads into a sports hernia. This is research that I found that stopped me from getting surgery. I was 4 months in, I wasn't getting better, and the internet says if you're not better after 3 to 6 months, pack it up. You're donezo. Get surgery. And so instead, I kept reading, and I saw a study that showed in majority of people who got sports hernia surgery, when the doctor was in there, they had researchers in the operating room, and they also observed about like 70 to 80% of people who got the sports hernia surgery, while they were in there, they looked at the hip joint, and they saw there was also presentation of hip impingement. So it was like, wait, what? For everyone that got surgery in that study of sports hernia, majority of them had what I already had, which was hip impingement. And they were getting the groin clipped oftentimes, and the adductors were chronically tight. So I'm like, so the same thing that could be causing that is related to this. Now, I didn't know if I was gonna heal that tear, but I finally realized it's not just helpless. I wasn't just doing ball squeezes with the wall sit and squeezing my groin or glute bridges with the ball. I actually had more of a route, which was like, hey, maybe if I worked on my hip impingement and worked on some of those related things with the groin, I could still have the sports hernia, but maybe I'll have no symptoms, just like the disc herniation. I may still have it, I have no symptoms. So this is the approach I took here. The sports hernia, from what I started to understand, there's a relationship between the low ab strength and the groin. That injury has a tug of war. It can pull and tweak and tear at the pubic bone, the lowest part of your low ab, and the pull of your adductor can affect that. So for me, my low abs were super weak. I never trained them. I only did years of track abs and like weird little flutter kicks and everything from the belly button up. But from the belly button down, nothing. And then I did a crazy amount of heavy squatting, not very deep and with motion, full mobility. and I got my adductors super tight from sprinting and squatting. So tight adductors, really weak low abs led to that imbalance where it just pulled off my low ab from the pubic bone. So I started to work to strengthen my low abs very slowly because it was so sensitive. I can't even tell you guys. I could barely lift up my knee and turn it without, just to be clear, it was radiating to male genitalia. Like it was hitting me in places that were crazy. So I couldn't even contract the muscles of my low ab without a shock. So I started literally just by holding my knee up, tissue tolerance level, not strength level. This was nothing for me as a sprinter, and getting that to where it's tolerant. Then the other side, and then over weeks, I started to train the low ab more directly with a tuck hold. So I would get on a chair and just lift up my knees. Now you may think, why didn't I do something like an L sit here? I'll get to this. But why didn't I start training for something more traditional with my legs out? Is because I also had my back still building. I couldn't tolerate ab training that flexed my spine like crunches or anything anymore because of my disc herniation. So this one kept my spine pretty neutral, upright, and I just held the knees. And I got pretty comfortable at first 30 seconds, and then eventually a minute. And you'll feel this if you do this alongside, you're hitting your abs, but you're also hitting hip flexors. That low ab hip flexor combo is what a lot of us miss. This is a little bit different than just crunches in the upper abs. So, I don't know how long it's been. I'm shaking a little bit. Let's say another 10. So, strengthening the low abs here, in combination to what we were already doing with the hip hike and impingement and that groin tightness, starting to unwork that imbalance. Then I went to, after that was good for like a minute, it's getting ridiculous to do 90 seconds, so try to hold that forever. Started the L-sit journey. My back extension reps were getting good. I'd make sure you can flex the spine with muscular contraction. And then once you get to an L-sit, your spine's a little flexed, but you're really training low ab and hip flexors. Most people need to start just one leg at a time. Do 30 seconds, put it down, 30 seconds, put it down. You're training the rectus femoris big time on the hip. You're also getting the low abs. This is cool because it continues to progress. Let's say you get to, after 6 months, this should take a long time, because you also need adequate hamstring flexibility to be able to do this, which we're going to work on. The back extension helps a lot. Getting to 30 seconds was a big goal, even 20. And then over time, you can even load it. This is back to the showing off thing. Like, I was injured and not shit for a long time. So any chance I can get, I just want to show what's possible. You start to weight it with like 3, I think that's 5 pounds, and you can hold there. And restart as a beginner, 10 seconds, 20, 30. This I was doing about twice a week. And so ultimately, the best one I would work to get to for the low abs is the reverse squat. I'm in my kitchen with this, so I don't got the cable machine. But once you're really training, I would do it in that order: tuck holds, no motion, bent knees for about 3 months. Once that's comfortable and you're getting some good reps in the back extension and you can handle more spinal flexion, the L-sits would be next, which is just extending the legs, still in iso hold. And then once you get to reverse squat, I'll show a video of it, you're really extending those legs out exactly where I got my sports hernia, with a little bit of load pulling you apart. And then you use the low abs to pull it back together and compress your body. Start very light. You're really rounding the spine, which is okay if you got reps unlocked. And that's going to bulletproof that area. Like, you're gonna be so pumped up and a little bit sore in a good way with the low abs. And I think that, compared to just squeezing a ball and waiting for things to kind of change and resting, it's such a more optimistic and realistic route. So for the sports hernia, a big part was strengthening the low ab wall. The last thing I'm gonna add is with stretching out what became impossible for me With the sports hernia, yep, I had to strengthen the low ab wall, but also any split position became a serious, straight, direct rip in my low ab, in my hip flexors. So instead of just cranking this out endlessly and trying different variations, I looked at what I learned from my knees already, working with knees over toes guy. He helped me a lot with my surgery in my knee. Now, he didn't have a back injury or the sports hernia, so I applied some of it to what was impossible from his program was a split squat hold. Actually, it was just reps at that time. And so I just did holds, and this was like I feel like I'm tearing it all apart, so I had to go even higher. But basically, long story short, I took the thing that was impossible. I was pretty certain I had to get surgery on my sports hernia because I couldn't sprint because of that stride separation right there. And I took 6 months going from holds at a pretty high level. Then I started doing reps, and then reps with weight. I'm like speeding up through a whole years of progress, basically. And then you go lower, piece by piece, and lower. The whole time I'm keeping high intention with this back leg. I'm squeezing the back glute, I'm squeezing the back quad. That's increasing the stretch on the hip flexor, so I had to really go slow with that. And by the time I even got close to the flat ground and getting closer to here, me going to the tissue tolerance of that tear, but improving, once I could do this, I could then do splits. And then when I was going to sprint, that stretch of a sprint was nothing. I was already strong from the reverse squats, and now I had the resilience to the length of that split squat to where I have just no more symptoms. So I may have the sports hernia technically on imaging, but I have no sign of it. And so I meant to write this earlier. The approach of the sports hernia is to play the long game, because this one took the longest time. Took a long time for me to figure it out. And it also took a long time for me to progress these movements without flaring it up because it was a very sensitive tear. So I'm out of breath. Try to keep these super concise. Camera one's gonna die. Probably start talking to camera two soon. But I sometimes get in my head about trying to present this super perfectly, try to make sure I don't mispronounce any little thing or just be accurate, because I can be at the criticism of very, very credentialized experts who kind of may despise an off-the-cuff video like this. Yeah, just work on this and then this improves and then just reverse engineer any problem. I'm not saying it's that simple. And I'm blessed to now be working with a bunch of surgeons and to have some of them be my friends and mentors. And I've had spine surgeons in the actual program. And it's been insane to see the progress and a lot of people with way more professional training than me fixing their low backs and actually changing the way that they treat their patients as a result. And so this was a bit all over the place. It's okay, I don't really care. Ended up being 50 minutes. For me, I just literally turn on the camera and try to make sure I fit everything in that I would have needed 5 years ago. And if I achieve that, even if it doesn't go viral, it's a mission success. And people fly across the world to come to events to thank me because of these videos.
Any like pro bono work, if you need some sort of like graphic work or anything.
Appreciate it, man.
No cost, like just let me know. Basically like saved my life over this last year. So.
I don't know what it's called.
Okay.
Okay, what else?
No more? No way.
I got, do you have these?
None of this is meant to be a flex. This is just me in awe that my deepest struggles that I couldn't find a way out of led to value for people. So hope you can pull what you need. We're doing the giveaways. If you haven't gotten in there yet, lowbackability.com/rootingforyou. That website itself is where the program lies. It's all pay what you want, meaning you pick how much you want to pay as a monthly subscription for the website. We're going to keep it that way forever. All the exercises we're doing today is in there. There's also education modules teaching you about things like tissue tolerance, aspects of the timeline to healing, all the kind of non-traditional, non-gym culture approach principles that we work with, like shown in these videos. So I appreciate y'all dearly. I really hope you can see there's more than just what the first 3 to 5 pages of Google shows you. I thought I was hopeless because I couldn't find answers, but there's answers out there. So I hope you keep going. If you need help from me, drop something in the comment. I'll be reading these. I appreciate y'all. Peace.